3 out of 4 of us bled today?
Apparently.
I could fix it. I could find a scab somewhere.
Oh.
Blood. I don't want to.
It runs thick.
Too spooky. Not on your ear. It runs thin, and it keeps going.
Well, mine was on my scalp.
It's an acquired taste, so I'm told.
So you're told.
Mm-hmm.
If you get anywhere close to my ear, I'm going to be very upset.
I mean, I ended up having to be that weird guy who's dabbing blood in public.
Like, did you bring your rig with you and everything to get it all heated?
No, I was sitting at church and I scratched behind my left ear and I'm like, why does it feel sandy? And then I looked under my fingernail and I saw dried blood and I'm like, oh, crap. I thought it stopped bleeding before I left the house. So I go in the bathroom, clean behind my ear, and then my head wound starts bleeding again. I had to pocket my blood paper towel. My blood towel.
I wish somebody would have asked you like if everything's okay, and you just take the dabbing towel and you cough into it and just look down into it and see all the blood and give them the classic movie moment of, and then just hide it away.
No, I'm fine.
No, I'm fine. Everything's okay.
It's like I was already trying to hide it because I felt like a leper. I'm like, here I am, a walking biohazard out in public.
Well, I nicked my ear in the shower with my razor, so we pretty much had the same day.
I know. Good thing I didn't shave my today.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dane Holland.
I'm Austin Shazam Pfeiffer.
I'm Marcus. I'm Electric Man.
And I'm Austin Tiny Zent.
And we are Nerd It Through the Grapevine, the podcast where 4 best friends gather weekly to talk about our favorite parts of past, present, and future nerd culture. And it's Friendsgivmas, baby. And we're here celebrating with you as we talk into microphones instead of paying attention to the dishes that I'm cooking inside the house right now.
That's true. I've got a roast in the crock pot. It's cooking up all nice and smelling good. My wife's got some spinach dip that's making in the crock pot that's a different crock pot. Dane's got a turkey in the oven. It's a pretty fantastic thing that's happening in there. Marcus's wife is... Dang, that's so weird.
Isn't it? Isn't that
thing.
weird to say?
That's a weird thing. He's got all married and stuff. So she's at her house right now cooking up a smorgasbord, and she's going to bring that over. It's a pretty exciting time. But the rest of the holidays to me are kind of like horror movies.
Horror
movies. I'm gonna say it how I say it, because if I try to correct myself at this point in life, it's just gonna be a lost jumble. So
I'm right there with you, pal.
So Christmas to me, it's got some good memories, but it's got a lot of like horror movie elements to it. A lot of horror movie elements to it, like that foreboding feeling that's setting up, knowing that your family's about to come over and you don't really like your family that much, but they're going to show up anyway. And then you know it's that inevitable scaredness that you get by getting too close to your mother while she's cooking, and with her sweet way of talking to you during the holidays. She said, "Don't you have anywhere else to go? Damn." And it's just that kind of brings me into the mood a little bit to talk a little bit more about horror movie elements to stuff, and how there's so many different branching elements to the horror movies segment that there are even like Christmas movies that are horror movies that are popular. Like there's the Krampus movie. I don't know if you've
Krampus.
It's
a good one.
It's
Krampus.
It depends regionally.
Yeah, it's like the classic Tupac debate. But
or Pac-Man and Pac-Man.
Ooh, Pacu Man.
I think that one's pretty settled, right? Isn't it Pac-Man? No, it might be Pac-Man. You might be right.
And
depends on where you are.
Well, it's just like Pocket Monsters or Pokemon. You know, what did Tiny call those things? Pocket Men.
Pocket Men.
Yeah.
That's how it's pronounced. Pocket Men.
So I also remember seeing another Christmas movie that was a horror movie that had Bill Goldberg in it. That was Santa's Sleigh.
The Wrestler?
Yeah.
Bill Goldberg?
Yeah, the Wrestler.
He's a horror movie star?
Yes, he was a scary movie Santa, and that Santa had come to...
That's a Jack Santa.
So if it's naughty or nice, and if you've been nice, which his standards are very high for being nice, you'll get gifts. If you're not nice and you're on the naughty list, he'll kill you.
Wait. What kind of naughty?
any of those.
Oh, you're on there.
So did it just look like Bill Goldberg?
It
Or
was-
did it look like a monster?
It was Goldberg in a Santa suit with a Santa, like, he had little face prosthetic, to make his nose a little bit different, and he had that big beard.
I've gotta see
but,
it. I'm
But
looking it up.
essentially, he was just a jacked Santa Claus.
The mentioning of killing and Santa Claus makes me think of The Santa Claus, the movie with Tim Allen.
He murdered a man.
Santa Claus. He murdered Santa Claus. That's how the movie starts.
a
Brutally.
man
Is
after
he-
my own heart.
He murders a man on his roof
Steals his clothes.
and takes his job.
To be fair, that man was trespassing on his property.
True.
We do have castle law.
He did have children, and he was trying to break into his home.
Yeah.
But it should have been more of a horror film than the happy, joyous Christmas movie that it was, because it starts off with a murder and ends up with a happy family.
And that movie recently had a resurgence because of the Santa Clauses Disney Plus thing that's going on. It's where they're taking the plot holes of the original movie and they're more or less like expanding on them a little bit and talking about them in this. So they're trying to say like, well, hold on a minute. The elves didn't bat an eye when I killed this man and stole his clothes because I'm now the Santa Claus. And Tim Allen's on an actual interview talking about this. He said nobody batted an eye at that. Like, it's not a question. Like, why aren't the elves more upset that their longtime Santa Claus that has been here for so many years and they loved him so much and now he's dead and nobody cares? What about his wife? What about Mrs. Claus? Does nobody care that I've just killed this man?
Well,
He could have been a bad man.
See, look, when that Santa Claus died, his body evaporated, and he absorbed the spirit of that Santa into himself. So technically, they're both Santa. They're both the same Santa, with our two Santas combined.
Okay.
And so he inherited Mrs. Claus as well.
He took up the mantle.
I
He took
see.
up the mantle and some dirty joke, Mrs.
Sure,
Claus,
yeah.
Insert dirty joke here.
That's also funny.
Yeah. And so clearly they wouldn't care because they're used to this kind of thing. It's like Highlander. There can only be one.
Yeah, I can understand that a little bit, but at the same time too, there were so many questions that were brought up in that, and seeing this more modern take on the old Santa Claus movie, which it's hard to think that movie is like 30 years old
your
almost. It's almost 30 years old.
Shut your mouth.
Is it really?
Yes.
Was it in it was 90s, right?
Yeah, early 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it came out way after I was 5.
Oh, are you calling sour grapes?
I am.
Jesus Christmas. Well, since you're calling sour grapes, I'll have to look it up. But you've got other movies that have been released here recently too that are kind of remakes, rehashing the originals, like the Hellraiser movie from Clive Barker's Hellraiser series. Now, that movie, I think, did a fantastic job of bringing back this old school, like, it's body horror. I think that's what the actual terminology is, where it's all this gore and all this awful stuff happening to the body, and a lot of these demonic creatures in there called the Cenobites. They are.
Sounds like cereal.
I know. I feel I feel like that all the time whenever I'm saying it, but it reminds
Cinnamon
me of
Cenobites.
Yeah, it reminds me of like those little muffins, like those little cinnamonies you used to get at Burger King from
Yeah.
Cinnabon. Cinnabon cinnamonies now at Burger King.
I don't know, man. The ones at the Taco Bell was just mwah.
Oh,
Do you think Santa is a Cenobite?
I think
like-
he
Kind of connecting those two, Hellraiser and the Santa Claus?
Does he experience pleasure through pain?
well, he does have his body sucked into the chimneys, and he seems to be just ho-ho-hoing the whole time.
And he does
so
eat an insane amount of cookies.
Yeah.
So it's
You know
got to be
he-
sick to his belly.
He loves like disappointing those kids who only get coal. Like he takes some dark
Great
pleasure,
pleasure.
in ruining
Yeah.
people's Christmas.
I mean, like, have we heard of any children getting coal for Christmas?
We've never seen those children, Tiny.
That's what I'm getting
There's
at.
a reason.
It's kind of like some pumping gas. You've never seen it.
Oh, hold on. Let's hold on. I'm gonna have to move on past that because my brain.
Should we ring the bell about Santa being a Cenobite? Have we decided that it could be real? It could happen?
I can go with it. I can because
there we
especially
are.
with all the the cookies because he's sick to his belly afterwards.
Yeah.
And it just
Especially
brings
all the rapid compressing and expanding.
Yeah.
For him to
Gluttony.
bring joy, he must experience pain.
Yes.
That's a good horror Santa. Horror.
I'd never seen the original Hellraiser, but while you were watching this one and I was walking through the living room, I would just randomly stop and kind of view what's going on the screen. And it's awful to watch
gruesome.
happening and gruesome, but it is kind of like a train wreck situation. And I get like that's kind of most of the appeal to those kinds of movies, right?
I mean, the books are just about as bad.
Which books?
Really?
Hellraiser is based on 2 books, and it spawned a whole bunch of like comics and graphic novels. The original short story was The Hellbound Heart, and then the one after that was The Scarlet Gospels.
So it wasn't titled Hellraiser until like other works, like you said, like the comics or whatever.
Because like Hellbound Heart, you first get to see Pinhead, and in the newest one, in a lot of ways, it's more in line with the source material because Pinhead is described as very androgynous. You know, you're not really sure gender wise and all these things, and it's just creepy, creeperson. That's about the best way to describe it.
Because in Hellraiser, they're not. I mean, they don't exactly tell you what the Cenobites even are. They don't even, because it's angels to some, it's demons to others.
It gets more into that in the second one, the Scarlet Gospels, because it actually follows Pinhead as like a priest of hell and gets into the engineer, who the engineer is the one that's actually making the various Cenobites, Pinhead, Pistonhead, so on and so forth, other heads.
That's awesome. See, I like horror like that gets into the magical fantasy elements.
And you've got different ones too, because you've got different evolutions of characters that have started out in a certain fashion that turn into other stuff over the years of them making these franchises out of the characters, like with Jason Voorhees, in that realm of slasher horror. They've got that started off. It was actually his mom that was killing everybody. And then it turns out that Jason is actually now undead, comes back to life, and then Jason Voorhees is really killing people in the furthering series. But same thing with like Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger starts off as like this demonic, scary guy that's in your dreams, that's this pedophile that's been burned alive, but he's still getting to go after the children's souls by haunting their nightmares. And from turning into that, in later iterations, he turns into an actual demonic figure that has existed for thousands of years and feeds off of this fear and can invade your dreams and such. And now that they've, the movie was called Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and it took the idea of Freddy Krueger being killed off in the series like he was, and that's it. Freddy's dead, the final nightmare. That's one of the last Freddy Krueger movies that they were planning on making, and they turned that into an actual bad thing for this demonic figure no longer having this source to channel this energy through. It had to become reality. So, Wes Craven's New Nightmare scared the living shit out of me as a child, because this was the 90s.
That sounds like a horror movie in and of itself.
Yeah, and this wasn't like the Pool and Spa Depot poo-poo kind of incident. It wasn't just like shaking it out of the cargo shorts and going about your day. This was like, I'm legitimately scared to go to sleep now because this bad man's going to get me with his burned up, scarred up skin and razor fingers.
See, like in a lot of movie series and different IPs, them just continuing to make stuff to kind of make money off of it is one thing, but if they can do it successfully in a way that they expound upon, like you said, this mythos of these creatures that to begin with, it's just to make this fun, scary movie. Just like I'm sure a lot of them, they just plan on them being one-offs. How often does a scary movie actually become good enough to keep on going?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking that like all the ones that I know of seem to be just that, have all these sequels. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's just because they're the popular ones. Like I'm trying to think of a slasher movie that's just like a good slasher movie that's just a one-off and you didn't have a sequel.
Well, that's hard to do because you can have decent like horror movies and then they want to make more money off of them, and then they end up running the franchise into the ground to where it's just hot stinking fecal garbage, like the Jeepers Creepers series.
Saw.
Oh god. Well,
Jason X was amazing. He was one of the best.
Okay, Tiny's got a point. Jason X was a
It was actually pretty great.
Was an Elseworlds tale of Jason Voorhees being trapped in ice in Camp Crystal Lake. It had like iced over. He was completely, frozen in time. And this is like 1,000 years in the future where they revisited Earth. They found this crystallized, frozen person, and they decided they would take the remains back on this spaceship to be able to observe them and to dissect them and to see what the human DNA used to be like. When they thaw him out and get him unfrozen, then hell unleashes in space.
It's Jason in space. There's a
is.
Jason in space
You
movie?
didn't know
And I
this?
didn't know.
Jason X
Oh
is
my
Jason
gosh.
in space.
You have to watch it. It is so
We
hilariously
should watch it as a
bad.
family.
There's like a robot.
I'm so on board
You know
with
how
that.
they've got like this nanobite technology and all these
We
like
can have premarital sex.
Oh, that's exactly what they do.
best thing.
They've got a simulator. They've got a simulator in the actual spaceship that simulates the kids at camp.
It's like a Star Trek holodeck.
Yep. And so it's like, well, what do you think we should do? I don't know. Maybe we should have premarital sex. And then Jason's like, I don't think so.
Then he straight up locking a socks one of them in the sleeping bag and beats the other one to death. It is great.
Oh, he beats the other one to death with the other one in the sleeping bag.
It's like a lock and a sock, just right on that other one.
And you think the movie's gone far enough, but then it goes even farther.
Good.
Because they've got this this woman on the ship that's actually an android.
Oh, we didn't spoil her for it.
Oh,
You're
I'm not.
spoiling it for me. I
I'm
want
gonna
to see
You
it.
do not want to see it. Dane hates
Stop.
scaries.
It's hilarious.
It's a fun scary, though.
I like
It is a
scary
fun scary.
sci-fi. I like scary sci-fi.
That's
cool.
that's what it is.
And there, the nanotechnology that is, of course, there to heal people on the ship. Jason ends up somehow falling into this machine, and the
Cyborg Jason.
and the nanotechnology merges with Jason, and Jason is like extra super powered strength. He's no longer got his hockey mask. He's got this metallic like nanobite mask
Skin
on.
face mask.
Yeah.
Seriously, none of this has ever been like shown to me. None of it. I've
is-
never seen
Well,
it.
we're gonna
anywhere.
watch it one night as a family, and it's gonna be
Yes.
awesome.
And then-
Absolutely.
and I say it's an Elseworlds tale because the furthering story of Jason Voorhees was then picked up again in Freddy versus Jason, to where
Yes, I
they
did
One
see that.
and two.
I did see that.
they had a Freddy versus Jason 2.
Yeah, there was two of them.
I don't know that. I didn't know that there was
Yeah.
a 2.
Yeah.
Don't call sour grapes
I
on
think- I
him
think the
before
number
you've
2
even
was
checked on
straight
yourself.
to DVD.
Oh my gosh. Well, if it was straight to DVD, I probably didn't see it because
Yeah, it was definitely not in theaters.
but in Freddy versus Jason, they took those two really high stacking IPs and then they made them into just one big, and I'm using quotations here, blockbuster movie. I mean, the story wasn't absolutely that piss poor. The execution, on the other hand, was so slapstick that it was more of a comedy than
look,
anything.
The Freddy movies are pretty slapstick funny anyway. If you look back at them, I mean, when I first saw them as a way too young child, they were the scariest movies in this whole world. However, upon later viewing, hilarious.
Yeah, they are more comedy. The older you get and
Like
realize
Chucky.
what it is.
Yeah.
Chucky's just
Hey,
comedy.
Don't mention Chucky. He made me poop outside a lot.
Chucky never scared me as
I
a
got in
kid.
trouble, and so did my sisters for that movie.
I mean, the Chucky movies were always kind of funny to me because even as a kid, I'm thinking like, well, just kick the doll. Like it's a doll. I had one.
My buddy.
The Child's Play doll was based off of the dolls that were out at the time that were made for little kids to have, called the My Buddy dolls. And same kind of suspenders, same kind of like boxing and everything. I remember having one of those, and I'd carry that thing around everywhere with me. And then I watch Chucky, and I'm like, well, my doll's better. Your doll doesn't even look that good. Like,
You're just all jacked up in the face.
it's not. That's not very convincing. But and
I don't
also,
know. I saw it when I was like 5.
you know what else is
So-
scary?
Ooh, that's not good.
My sisters forced me to watch it when I was a small, wee young one.
You know what else is scary, Tiny?
What?
The Santa Claus came out in 1994. 1994.
Well, you said 95, so I'm still right.
Oh my gosh.
Those grapes are only slightly, just a tinge of sour to
Yeah.
them.
They're not quite fuzzy.
That's my dad.
So, Freddy X, what'd you say? It was
Jason
called?
X.
Jason X, not Freddy X. I'm getting them all mixed up. That appeals to me because it's the mixture of two genres. And like, I know most horror is fantasy in itself, but not high fantasy. But having a horror high fantasy or a horror western or this horror sci-fi. I think if horror is mixed in with another one, that makes my ears perk up, because if it's just the standard horror film, like I don't have any, there's no appeal to me. I don't
Yeah.
like being, I don't like feeling nervous. Like
I
watching
agree.
a movie
Well,
like
and most
that.
of the time I don't feel nervous. I feel bored in
Yeah.
in horror
Yeah.
movies. Like there's the we have to exorcise a demon horror movies, and then there's like the people from America are getting killed by something, either a spirit or stabby.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Horror is not my favorite genre.
Yeah, mine either.
I don't know. When I watch them, I typically watch them to laugh and have a good time. The only ones that actually kind of get me are the ones that could quote unquote really happen.
Oh, with like psychological horror.
Yeah,
stuff.
more like psychological
Absolutely.
things. It's like, serial murderer, slasher type things. Those will actually kind of bother me. But when you get to like monsters and demons and all that stuff, nah, I just laugh. What was that one where they're trapped in the elevator? The devil.
The
I
devil.
think?
Yeah.
I busted out laughing in the movie theater watching
that in
that
my timeline?
movie.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan.
I think it was Eminent Timeline. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
they had so many good lines in that movie, though. Like, because the way they realized that the devil's there is because I can't remember his name. It's Michael something, I think Pena or something like that.
I think so.
He was in Ant-Man. Back it
Michael
up,
Pena.
back it on up, nice and slow, nice and slow. That guy. The way that he described knowing that the devil was there was because he dropped a piece of jam toast and it landed jam side down on the floor, and he's like, yeah. Like there's other stuff that's happening, like lights are flickering, like cameras aren't working appropriately, and like shit's just going wrong. But the realization comes to this man whenever his jelly lens jelly side down. He said, "The devil's here."
Yeah, there was
grandma-
also that freeze frame too, because that happened around the same moment.
Yeah. And so he kind of knew. He was like, my grandmother used to always say, in the presence of pure evil, jelly lands on your bread, jelly side down. Like it's just a weird M. Night Shyamalan. He's gonna put some weird out there, and that was the weird of that was just like that's how you're gonna just absolutely know that the devil's there.
But is he just putting weird, or is he trying to make some sort of point that he failed to make? Like, I don't know.
Look, I feel like he always tries to make some kind of point, but just fails at it miserably.
I mean, have you seen the movie The
guess.
Happening?
80% of the time he does.
Not to say that I don't enjoy a lot of his movies, because I actually do, yet his point never comes across.
Yeah, I would say 80% of the time, M. Night Shyamalan, he fails at that.
Well, I think he just likes to go, oh, what a twist.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
with a twist! With a twist, though.
Yeah, what a twist.
Yes, you've
plants-
been bored for an hour and a half, but wait, the twist is coming.
Here's the twist, and the twist is the plants are killing everyone.
The twist is the people live in a village away from society.
That one was
I
Garbo.
actually really liked that movie.
What? Really?
I mean, the movie's fine, but then the ending ruins it.
Yeah, it should have just stopped when she went to seek and just leave out the whole part about
Please.
the park ranger after that.
And that's the thing, I think. Yeah, I mean, because Signs was okay too. I thought that was a pretty cool movie, except water is like defeats the universal alien race.
I'm married to that small child. She grew up. She became my wife because now I find water
your
bottles.
wife is an alien?
No, my wife is the water's contaminated girl. Like my wife will get 3/4 away through a water bottle, and then I'll find it sitting around, and I'll have to finish it.
well, we're safe
Wait,
against
does she
aliens.
listen to this?
No,
Okay, then you're good.
no, I'm safe. I'll probably let her listen to this just so she knows.
Signs has the scariest moment of a movie I've ever seen, of any movie ever. And it's not even really that much of a horror
A knife
film.
under the door?
No.
The party.
The birthday party. The filming of the birthday party. So there's just it's just from a camera, like a camcorder of someone recording a birthday party. And it just seems to go on normally. You're just watching stuff happen. And then they stop the film and they rewind it. And you're like, okay. So then they play it back, and then they show in the background, in the hole in the fence, you see the alien walk by and look through the fence and keep going. And I'm getting chills thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because it's the whole, like, this is happening right in front of you. You're watching the moment, but you don't see the thing happening in front of you. And that made me so, like,
Yeah.
ugh.
Well, I think that
It
movie
stuck with me.
It did a good job of making the weight of like, oh my gosh, there are literally aliens invading our world. It made it almost real, and
Yeah.
like it built it up to it.
I loved The Sixth Sense too from Shyamalan because it was one of those. I mean, the first time you're seeing it, you're not thinking about that twist ending because M. Night was not established yet enough to know that this guy's going to throw a curveball here. It's not going to have this. You didn't know that the twist endings were coming because you haven't established his style of movie making yet. Now we watch one, it's like, where's the twist?
Yeah,
I'm waiting on my
waiting for it.
twist.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out before it even happens.
Where's this rod become a curled up pretzel?
His movies are not very good for rewatchability. You watch it the first time and you're like, oh my God, I never saw that coming. Unless you're my sister. She tries to figure out every movie. I'm like, just sit and enjoy it.
Please.
What the heck's wrong with you? I don't care what your theory is. Just watch the flipping movie.
I argue,
And then-
though. Sorry, finish your point.
And then you get to the end of the movie and you're like, oh my God, like Signs. I never saw that coming. I was like, oh my God, he's been dead this whole time.
That was Sixth
Sixth
Sense.
Sense, yeah.
Sixth Sense, sorry. And then you go back and you watch it the second time and you're like, oh, okay, because this. And third time, you're bored out of your skull.
Yep. Because the Marcus, you had a thing you were
I
saying.
was just going to say that I think Split has rewatchability.
Wait, that's just
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That movie's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's gotten better
The
then.
performance. That performance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
dude.
and then that same character-
McElroy?
McElroy, yeah.
Yeah.
McAvoy.
James
That
McAvoy.
dude, he got some chops, bro.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Like
Absolutely.
every different person in his head, everything about him changes and it's done beautifully.
Et cetera.
Yeah, and I think a long time ago I did like a topic on his superhero universe.
Yeah.
because it's
Unbreakable.
Split, and then Glass.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And Glass.
It flopped, right?
Yeah.
I'm
it
not.
wasn't
I'm
that-
not going to give it the.
I actually liked it.
I thought it was hot stinkle. I don't
mean,
think it was full
wasn't-
blown.
It wasn't as good as Split, but it was still pretty good.
Well, and even Split's like twist ending is that he's some sort of, or one of his personalities is some
look,
entity or
the
something.
beast.
I wouldn't have called
Yeah.
that a twist because they tell you throughout the whole thing.
I thought the big twist in Split wasn't actually that his personality could actually become a manifested superpower. I thought that the big twist in that was that you go to that diner at the very end and you have Bruce Willis's character saying his name was Glass. His name was Mr. Glass.
Oh, okay. So to you, the twist is this is in the Unbreakable universe.
Yes.
Because we had no idea. for that.
I was in theaters watching this and I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I loved how he got all this different, such good acting chops for being all these different people at the same time in the same body. And then and then you think, okay, well, I guess that might have been it. And then it hits that note. And Unbreakable, I've seen that movie so many times. It's one of my favorite, like, plausible superheroes could exist movies.
Yeah.
And to see one of my favorite characters, which was Bruce Willis's character in that, is sitting in that diner and have a response to somebody saying something, just talking about this. Like, didn't something else like this happen not so long ago? Who was that guy that tried to do? His name was Glass. And chills. I just got chills again, just because it reintroduced one of my favorite on-screen superhero style characters into an existing, like, oh God, he's got a supervillain now. But I felt like Glass was just so rushed once they had made that connection that it just didn't carry over right.
That's the point I was fixing to make, because the idea of an in-universe movie, of not knowing it beforehand, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And for there to be connections by the end of it to where then you can look back and see different connections and stuff, and just knowing they exist in the same universe. Because we're so used to superhero films now. When the Marvel title is on a movie, okay, well, this is the same universe as Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, all those guys. Like, it's all existing there. But when you get out of that main or DC or some main title thing, when all of a sudden you see this in-universe stuff going on, it's really cool. Which, I mean, M. Night Shyamalan did both Unbreakable and Split.
Yep.
But you don't think at all that movie is going to have anything to do with Unbreakable.
No.
Going into it.
And I Split tying into that Unbreakable canon really drives points throughout that movie home even harder, just because the idea of not all the supervillains are going to be like Mr. Glass, to where they're more mental capacity than they are physical capacity. They're more able to design, grand design of evil scheme, as opposed to the other side of the evil villain, which is just the beast. Mm-hmm. This malevolent force, this overwhelming strength, the ferocious nature, this I'm out to kill, this bloodlust. Like, that is another form of superhero villain, and to have they could have left it for me. They could have let that marinate for a little while for me, just to have Bruce Willis's character knowing that this now exists and that he's got his next villain.
But now you've got a universe, and now you've got to have a trilogy. Like, that's what happened. It wasn't just, whoa, this exists in the same universe. The end. Moving on. That was awesome. Now we want to go back and watch Unbreakable and probably Split again after that. Instead, it was, well, now I've got a superhero universe. Where's my trilogy? Here it is. Here you go. Which I think, Tiny, I'm glad you liked it, because that makes me want to watch more of it, because I think I saw some of it here at the house while he was watching it, and it wasn't really grabbing me.
I feel like I liked it so much because there was such large gaps in between me viewing all three of these movies. Because like the split between the making of Unbreakable and Split was a very long one.
It was good.
And the one that was between Split and Glass was way shorter, but I waited entirely too long before viewing that, so it kind of reminded me of Split, and so I guess it allowed me to actually sit and enjoy it for what it was, and not feel like it was so rushed and slapped together.
Gotcha.
Because, you know, there are parts of it that's just cheese
Kinda hokey,
factor and hokey, and it's like, why did you do it this way? But the actual meat of it, I feel like, was really good and really well done.
I want to give it more of a chance.
It's
now.
just a cool idea, I think.
Yeah.
I appreciate it for what it is, too. Yeah.
And you've got a lot of these properties that are going through remakes, and they'll give them rehashing of their origin stories, just like Halloween with Michael Myers. You know, the original, you know, takes one route, and then you've got Rob Zombie who picked it up for another couple movies, and then now they had more movies that are off of the original canon that ignore Rob Zombie's movies. So they have a lot of stuff like that happens oftentimes, like you did with Stephen King's It. Stephen King's It had an original movie that had came out that wasn't a movie per se. It was just a ready-for-screen kind of release.
It was a
television
TV miniseries.
Yeah, television miniseries. And then they, of course, now every time you see it, it's all shoved together into a movie format that lasts like 4 hours long.
Yeah.
But then they had the rehashing of it that came out with Skarsgård, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah, it was great.
I mean,
it was so good.
Tim Curry was my original fear of clowns. He is what made me scared of clowns, so I got to give props to the man for that. But then seeing Skarsgård's version of it in the newer movies, it's even worse, because it is literally like a personification of that demonic otherworldly person, or that otherworldly thing that's inside of this clown, represented throughout the entirety of it. You know, it doesn't give you like this big spoiler, this is what it looks like, but it makes you know that, you know, this thing has got all these extra powers and something's not right.
Yeah, it more accurately represents the cosmic horror aspect of it, as opposed to the original TV miniseries, which was very dumbed down. And if you just watch that one, you're like, so he's Pennywise the dancing clown, but all of a sudden he's a spider inexplicably. And so watching the remakes, or should I say the good ones, it actually delves deeper into what it actually is.
On the subject of Stephen King, something I was wanting to ask you specifically about, because I think you have more experience than the rest of us in reading prose that is in the horror genre.
Yeah.
Which one is scarier whenever you're doing the two? If you can even say scary, because I don't know if you have a scary feeling when you watch them, or
not really,
or read them, whichever.
It kind of depends on how well it's done in whatever media, because some of Stephen King's books are horrifying. When I first read it, I was 7 years old. Also, don't read it if you're 7 years old. It was horrifying. So then when I saw the movie as a teenager, I'm like, oh, this is stupid. You know, so I have a very active imagination. So when I read things, you know, I get a very vivid picture in my head. So sometimes if it's described well, which Stephen King does very well as far as like gore, body horror type imagery, that it just makes a more terrifying picture in my head than if I was to see it on the screen.
Gotcha.
Because my mind is more twisted than whoever, I guess the director or whatever, that decided this is how it's going to look for the movie.
Well, you don't have the same restraints in your head as they do making the film.
Exactly.
They can only do so much.
Right, and then their producer was like, that's too much, y'all. Let's dial that back a little bit.
And I can't read. That's a bad pause.
Period.
I'm sorry. There was
period.
that was a bad pause. I can't read horror books because my imagination is so overwhelmingly strong while I'm reading books that I can look up from the books and temporarily see what I've had in the books, like in real life. I was, when I worked at the YMCA, it happened to me reading the Dear John novel because I was invited by a couple of girls at the time to go watch Dear John with them, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah, I'll go hang out, whatever, that'll be cool, but I want to know what this is about. So I read the book because my mom had it. And I read the book. I was into the book enough that with the description of the scenery, with the beach setting, with the sunsets and this and that, I opened up the YMCA at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the sun wasn't coming up till around 6. It was at that point of the year, and I'm sitting there reading this book, and I've been reading this book for about 30 minutes, and I look up from the book, and it's temporarily like sunny. Like it's temporarily really pretty and bright and beautiful and sunny, and then I stood up to do something, and it was still dark. So that's how much my brain gets into, the imagery inside of books. So I know I could never read something scary because I wouldn't be able to leave my room. I read one scary, and it was based off of, which now I know that it's all a hoax and it was all lies. And thanks to the podcast Haunter, I barely know her, for talking about it and pissing me the hell off. But The Demonologist was a book that was written based on the true life events of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
In quotes.
Yes, in quotes. And it was what they had going on through personal experiences of the people that were there with them during all of these investigations. And reading that made every noise that would happen in my room a ghost or a demon or something. It was that's what it was. Like it was literally the air conditioner kicking on, and now my floor is a little bit colder and it's going to crack a minute. That's all that's happening. But no, El Diablo! Like it's I turned into like a crazy cat lady that doesn't trust people because I'm sitting there just scared to death of everything going on because of how well described this stuff was. But that's just my imagination. So movies don't hit me that way. I root for the bad people in the movies because I hate the decisions that are made by the good people in the movies.
Yeah. See, in a lot of ways, I feel you on that because, like, I've been reading Stephen King since before I should have been reading Stephen King, and one of the scariest ones to me was Misery because it's so realistic. The crazy lady sees, the writer in this accident, takes him home, and it's her favorite author, so she's going to keep him imprisoned in this house and all this mess. So reading that as a young man, laying in my bed, every creak in the house, I'm like, oh shit, there's Annie Wilcox. Wiltz, sorry. There she is. She's gonna come here, bust my legs with a hammer. It's just horrifying, just all the sounds. And then so you do that thing that little kids do, that you put the blanket over your head because then
you're safe.
Then you're safe. But I was a weird kid because now I'm like, what if I suffocate and die? So I stick my nose out through a little hole so I can breathe good. Because, if he comes in and be like, oh man, he's under the blanket, but it's like, but there's his nose. And they're like, oh. Well, I can't get his nose because it's mostly covered. All I see is the nose holes. And I'm like, haha, evaded you.
The stuff that scares people's changed so much over the years too, because we become desensitized to the scary stuff. Like what would used to scare people. I can't English very well, so you're going to have to follow along with what I'm trying to say here. Things that used to be scary. There we go.
There it is.
Like the original iteration of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, when they had the visitors step out of the spacecraft and the government's all on it. That scared my mother so bad she couldn't sleep as a child because it was so realistic to her that these otherworldly beings were going to visit and cause chaos. And looking back on that in the way that it was presented to someone that's our age, it looks absolutely stupid. It's like they made, it's like, oh, great, the tinfoil people are coming to get in our microwave. That's about as scary as it is.
Yeah.
And then you take movies like, say, Insidious, which was a series of movies that were released in the 2000s, and they kind of stopped, I think, at this point because they had spin-offs and this and that kind of became little hot stinkle, so I'm glad they're not doing any more of that right now. But James Wan was the director of those things, and he made such a good mixture of psychological thriller mixed in with supernatural thriller because of the soundtrack that he would use. And it was because of that stupid ass Tiny Tim Tiptoe Through the Tulips song that it resonated this really dark spot to make the movie just that much more eerie. because nobody sings like Tiny Tim. Nobody sounds like that.
It's also the juxtaposition of something very happy and light and all that, coupled with something just so dark and just gross and evil. That's just, it makes it even more scary.
I think that's true, and I think that's why reading, in my experience, I think has had the potential to scare me so much more. And of course, I'm going to go to a tried and true favorite of mine,
Malazan.
A Song of Ice and Fire.
The
I
other
was
one.
wrong.
It's the other one.
Because like you said, and this, while I'm talking about the books, you're going to see how the show just completely failed in this. But you're getting Bran's perspective, an 8-9-year-old boy in a cave filled with werewood roots and some 150-year-old mysterious albino Targaryen, impaled by the roots, teaching him how to be the three-eyed raven. And, Jojen dies. And then next thing, like in one of Bran's next chapters, he's like eating this paste that's been ground up by one of the little children of the forest. And it's pretty clear that that's Jojen. And that's what's fueling the power, the Green Seer powers and things like this. So it's like just having that from a child's perspective. And like you said, all these dark things going on around him, but him just not understanding. Well, plus, and just the sense of magic in his world is unknowable. And what is really going on will probably never really be told. So something about that experience, it would be hard to capture on film. I think.
Yeah, that's much creepier.
Oh God, it's terrifying.
And there's a lot of different stuff too that comes into different aspects of the horror, like the genre that combines comedy aspects of it, that takes like this approach to, the bad decisions that the good side will make during these movies. Like, am I going to run out of this house and escape this slasher that's in here trying to kill me with a knife, or am I going to go to this dark room over here and try to hide out and see if they just won't notice me like they have every other victim? Mm-hmm. So it's like door to freedom, room to death. I want to stay in my house. I'm safer here. No, you're always like, you idiot! Like, why are you doing that?
I mean, my main question watching these things are, where's your gun?
You can tell that a lot of this stuff never took place in the South, because a lot of stuff would probably be solved way too quickly for the guy that's in the Scream mask with the knife trying to stabby when he gets into your house and he gets capped. So
and then you just pull the mask off, movie over.
Yeah.
We know you now.
It was old man Jameson.
See, you stay strapped so you don't get clapped.
What?
You stay strapped so you don't get clapped.
Oh, I thought that was like a penicillin thing or something.
No, different clap.
So, as we've discussed, there's a separation in a lot of the films that we see because of the reality of it. Because, like you said, Tiny, if it's like demonic or monstrous and things like that, there's a disconnect there to where you're just watching the thing happen,
right? And
it's more fun or funny than it is, real. But then there's some that are more realistic, like the one where the lady's going to bash your legs in. If you're a writer that's a favorite of hers, she's just a lady and she's crazy. So there's that aspect of it, but you're watching it on screen, so it's not as scary as it is reading the description of all of it and watching it in your head. But then even beyond the reading and watching it in your head is video games in the horror genre, because you're controlling the person in the scenario as opposed to reading about what someone is experiencing. You're the one running from the thing chasing you in the house that's gonna murder you.
Oh, absolutely. Phasmophobia.
Right.
Dude, it's got like that proximity sound, with your investigation team. Don't play that game by yourself. That's just a death trap. And some of the maps, even with 4 people, horrible. They're huge. But you'll hear the ghost like come and whisper in your ear, and then it goes and stuff, and you're like, oh God. Don't play it with the lights off. You'll be horrified.
That sounds fun though. Like,
it is
to me,
fun, but it's legitimately scary.
I want that feeling again that I had when I played PT for the first time.
What is PT? I know what it
You're
is.
Gonna have to help.
What
You're
PT
going to
is.
have to help
well,
me.
when you're in JROTC, On Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have physical training. So there's running, calisthenics, plyometrics.
Hey, that's a hard thing for me right
that's
now.
funny.
Yeah.
It was the guy that made the Metal Gear games. Is that right, or am I completely off?
No, you got it right. It's
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, Hideo Kojima.
Okay, so he was about to team up with the guys from Silent Hill or something, or he was going to do a Silent Hill game, and so he made this like demo level that somehow got released. But
For
then,
free, right? I think it was a free demo thing on
but
PlayStation.
then somehow the game never got made, but people like still had it installed on their PlayStations, and so you could still play it, and it was just one of the most scary experiences for me.
See, and you mentioned people still having it. That not often do like publishers take games off of like the PlayStation Network or off Xbox or off Steam. It's not often the game is removed. Like people just play what's there, and if it's never worked upon beyond that, that's fine. They just kind of played the demo, the end. They actually took this away. So it was something, if you didn't already have it, you could not get it anywhere else, because I'm pretty sure it was just PlayStation, if I'm not mistaken, I think. And that added to this whole like mythos behind PT, because not only was it this phenomenon of a scary game of you running around this hallway over and over and over again, but just crazier, scarier things happening every time you go through it.
Well, imagine if he'd actually made a full game.
Yeah.
Because that was literally just like a level, I think. I don't really know.
Is it like an apartment complex style hallway, or is it like a hospital
It's
style
like it's
hallway?
a house.
I don't like that. I would hate hospital hallway even worse, because going paranormal investigating in all the hospitals that I'd been in, going on those investigations, those were always creepier than going to like haunted houses, because it's just that automatic sense of, people die here all the time. This is a hospital. But it's that combined with like the darkness and the hallways and the corridors and the things unseen, be that spiritual or physical. Like you're literally walking around blind because there's so many corners. So, I mean, that just adds to the aspect of it. But it being inside of a house, inside of corridors and hallways and stuff like that, that's scary within itself, just because there's so much that remains unseen around every corner.
Well, and the hallway was infinite. Like you kept going around it. There was no escape.
Yeah, once you got to the end of the hallway, you went through a door, which would lead you to the beginning of the hallway. But I would imagine if he would have made a full game, and I forget the point of it. There is a point, but it doesn't make it clear. It's basically a puzzle, a really, really scary puzzle, because each time you go around the circle, like something else is a little bit different about the hallway this time. Like now the radio's on, and there's a cigarette like burning in the ashtray. And so I don't know, it's really heady. It's really freaking creepy. Things like what you said, Tiny, like the sounds behind you would creep up behind you and stuff. But I imagine if you would progress, like if it would have been a full game, like maybe the setting would have changed. So you beat the house, and now you're in another setting, like the hospital. Now you got to go to the hospital. I don't know.
Man, or that same hallway could have just evolved to the point of unrecognizable.
Yeah, that would have been crazy.
It could have devolved into some otherworldly, like multi-dimensional situation. Because that's the way Kojima kind of thinks. Like he's very artistic in the nature that he does these kinds of games.
Yeah, because all the mechanics in that were just like so cool for what like it's a hallway, but I'm not good at describing it.
It's hard to describe because that's what it is. It's just you're walking around the same hallway and scarier stuff starts happening as you're working around
and you can interact with it just slightly.
Yeah, so it does something to you.
Like Silent Hill. Like the video game Silent Hill, where you'd be going around and it would be, kind of like this snowy, like dark, misty setting, and then all of a sudden the bell would go off, and then everything is split, and now the scenery is like this ashen, demonic, like scary fest. Like everything is just awful now, and then it now it's back to normal, but you don't know when this normal is going to shift over back into the awful, and it's kind of that looming feeling of uncontrollability, like you don't have any control over what's happening. You're stuck and you're
Yeah.
Me being the person that I am, the avid role player, there are even horror-themed role-playing games out there. You've got Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Forsaken, and Call of Cthulhu, just to name a few. And I played a couple games of Call of Cthulhu, and I game mastered a couple for VTM. But Call of Cthulhu, you're a guy. You have a job, or a lady, or other, whatever you decide you want to be. My particular character was a little person. He was an exorcist. He was sent by the Catholic Church to investigate this thing. And as you play the game, your characters slowly descend into madness, because the more you learn about Cthulhu, the crazier you become, because you lose sanity points. And eventually, I mean, you play this game knowing your character's probably going to die. There's like a 90% certainty that everyone's going to die during the course of this adventure. But the fun lies in all the scary things that happen along the way.
That's cool.
So your character was a little person that was an exorcist.
Yes.
And their catchphrase was defeating evil is no small task.
No, he was Russian, so
Conquering evil is no small task.
I mean that would work.
Pretty good.
That was pretty good.
You're welcome.
I gotta give that to you.
And these are tabletop RPGs,
Yes,
right?
TTRPGs.
So it's still a game because you're still acting out the role of the person in the
Yes.
scary situation. And as long as, I mean, even you as the game master, you can still be explaining it in ways that still spooks you, you know, because
Oh,
it's so
absolutely.
creepy. But as a person playing it and someone telling you, okay, this is what you're getting into now, that sense of fear of, I'm the one in the situation now.
Yeah.
I'm not watching some idiot running into a dark room that's filled with chainsaws.
Exactly.
Like, I'm the person that's trying to decide the best decision, and sometimes there is no
Well,
best decision.
Like my character made like the most horrible decision. We ended up in a place where the Necronomicon was. My character, being sent by the Vatican as an exorcist, knowing that the Necronomicon is over in this other room, I have to do everything that I can to investigate this book and see if I can, make the evilness surrounding it stop. So I managed to make my way in there through a very long conversation, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, like, fine, I'll give you 5 minutes with it if you just shut up. You can only look at it. You can't open it. You can't read it, So what do? I open it and I begin to read it, and just horror ensues because, I don't know what I'm about to read. And then the game master has to, obviously fill it in. And basically my character went insane for a while. Like, he just couldn't see out into the real world anymore. All he saw was visions of horror and monsters and Cthulhu's face, and he chose the way of violence. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
And if you had watched more of the Sam Raimi horror movies, the Evil Dead series, you might have had a little bit more idea of what's going to happen when you read this Necronomicon, because that's
I already
exactly
knew, but
that's what
he
actually
knew, but his character,
character
that he was
didn't.
role-playing.
dumb character. He should have watched the TV more.
It was the 30s.
Then there would have been no Evil Dead to watch. But in the Evil Dead, there's the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Book of the Dead, bound in human flesh and inked in human blood. It's the main thing that drives the evil force, which is a cosmic horror within the Evil Dead. Even though it presents itself in demonic ways, it presents itself in more like the stereotypical possession ways, because like he has to cut off his hand because his hand gets possessed, and now he's got a stump for a hand, and what's he going to do with this stump for a hand? Well, I'm going to fashion a chainsaw gauntlet.
Like Cool Hand Luke.
Yes, except Vroom Hand Luke, I think. But and then you got the different iterations that come later on in it, that you got the Evil Dead, and you got the Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. What's all that is just a retelling with better graphics, basically, with an ending on it to present another movie afterwards, which was Army of Darkness, which is where he gets sucked by this cosmic force, this cosmic evil, the cosmic terror that is involved there. That is, he gets sucked into a different plane of existence, which is actually like medieval times. And now he's having to fight through all these medieval versions of the demons that he was already having to fight in the cabin in the woods that they found. And that cabin in the woods, that's a subversion of the entire horror genre. If you ever see the Chris Hemsworth movie Cabin in the Woods,
See, that one
I think I
seems
did
like
see
an
that
M.
one.
Night Shyamalan because of the twist, right?
yeah, it totally seems like a twist. But all it is
I've
basically,
seen this movie.
yeah, all it is just like these people working in this horror factory. They're like, okay, well, how are these people going to die? Oh, well, they're having sex too close to this, so they're going to be killed by this slasher. Oh, these people are traveling too close to the swamps. It's got a swamp creature that's going to attack them, and they've got this mechanism and this giant machine fueling these old gods' powers by feeding them people's souls that they get captured in different ways through fear.
Cool.
And
Yes, I like that.
That's
and
neat.
It's absolutely ridiculous, because if they ever stop feeding these old gods, then the old gods will create the apocalypse and will end the earth. And that is the entire point of Cabin in the Woods, is these people find out that that they're trapped in a simulation. Basically, they're trapped in this this programming of scary that's basically a take on all the different horror aspects that exist, and they break out. Chris Hemsworth's character doesn't make it because he's, of course, the badass character, the muscle boy, like the I'm the hero, and he decides he's going to jump his dirt bike over this ravine to freedom, and this is literally what goes on. He's like, he gets like this long, super fast like jump, and it's going perfect, and then there's a barrier, and he hits an invisible like.
Discord.
He hits this invisible force field that's out there that's a part of the machine that they're trapped in, and he just dies because he hits this force field. He crashes midair and falls to his death down the ravine. So then they chalk that up to a win for the home team there.
See, I feel like that movie is a perfect example of what, to me, can make horror entertaining, because all the pieces inside of it, like just the swamp monster or just the slasher, like those things in and of themselves are, whatever. Like they're just kind of not that entertaining to me.
Hordes of zombies.
Sure. Yeah. It's all things you've seen before. You know what's going to happen. There's nothing really great about it other than the visual nature of it, I guess. But then you zoom out and see like this cosmic entity is involved with it in this like group of, I don't know if they're scientists or whatever it is.
Basically, they're like scientists in the way they're presented, but they're all working towards this mythological science.
Yeah. Okay.
So like it's all blood magic basically that they're accomplishing through scientific means.
Yeah, to me, it needs
So it's fantasy.
more.
Yeah.
It's fantasy.
It's
Like,
awesome. Yes,
it took
that's
it
great.
and made it higher fantasy than just the fantasy of just the one character, that's the undead. So I think that's a good way of doing that. And a newer way, as of the last few years, of making, like earlier I was mentioning the video games, of making them scarier is VR.
No.
So-
F that.
No. I went through a roller coaster.
There is the only separation you can have at all in VR is by making sure your brain knows it's not real, because other than, of course, taking the VR off your head. But as far as like a quick way, because reading a book, look away, try to get the image out of your head, right? Watching a movie, you can like close your eyes and, look away or whatever. And in a regular video game, set the controller, get down, press pause, walk away. But in VR, yes, you can pause it too. But you
can also close your eyes.
You're more right, but you've still got this, like, if your headphones are on, and you don't want to close your eyes because then you don't see the thing that's gonna get you.
You got to get away from
it's
it.
You
more of
gotta
a-
escape.
More of a sense of imminent danger.
Yeah.
And my father had that exact same experience with his scariest movie he ever saw. But that was it was Jason. It was Friday the 13th 3D. It was one of the kind of the middle section of the Friday the 13th movies in the way they were released, but they released it in 3D in the theaters, and you had the glasses and everything. And my dad was scared to death. He hates scary movies now because of that, because he was screaming and this is their terminology for it. There are older generations, but he was a bitch, So he had the 3D glasses on, and all of a sudden some snakes jump out, and they look like they're actually coming at you. And my dad's reaction as a bearded, hairy, masculine man was so he never saw another scary movie in theaters because of that.
Well, yeah, strap a VR headset on him and put him in Phasmophobia, where you're a ghost hunting team going into a house that's haunted.
I refuse. I refuse to do that.
Because everywhere you look, you're looking in the space that you're occupying within the game. And it's this part of your brain. It's that lizard monkey part of your brain that just doesn't know that it can't be real. Because even I remember the first experience I ever had with VR. I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but it was whenever it first had come out on like Samsung phones, and they had the little headset that you just slide the phone in and put it in front of your face. I was at Best Buy, and they had it set up as a little display. So I was like, oh, cool. I've heard about this, but I haven't been able to use it yet. So I put on the headset, and the first thing that happens, I don't know, you're something like in the jungle or something, looking around, seeing animals move around and everything. It's really pretty. And then the next one, you're in space, and that weird feeling of when I turned and looked away from the Earth, because you're looking at Earth, but then if you turn your head and look, it's the vast emptiness of space that you see, the forever that is the unknown. And that part of your brain's like, we don't like floating in space. And I'm like, okay, yes, but we're not floating in space, brain. It's fine. So then,
But we don't like floating in
but
space.
we don't like it. And I know we don't like it, but we're not having to do it. It's not real. So my brain says, okay, you're right. It's not real. And then the next one comes on, and I'm in the ocean, and I'm looking around, and there's fish and everything, and it's real nice. But then I turn and look down, and it's just the dark blue getting darker and darker to black of just the endless depth that is the ocean. And I immediately had to take the headset off, because that was the most scared I've ever been, besides, seeing that moment in Signs. But it was different. It was like a real fear of I was not able in this VR moment to tell my brain it wasn't real. I couldn't do it enough.
That would be something that sounds to me like it'd be actually like traumatic for somebody like Tiny, who is scared of both heights and depths.
He and I share these
you're
fears.
both high and deep at the same
They're the same
time.
thing. If you flip that scale upside down, it's the same deal. One is just the other, right?
Yeah.
Height and depth are the same thing, just on opposite ends.
Except there's water.
That's worse.
I
You're
know,
so
that's
high.
what
I
I'm talking
can't
about.
breathe in either of them.
In the ocean, you're both high and deep.
Yeah, it's awful, and I'm scared of it. And I realized how scared I am of those things, thanks to VR.
I've not ever been to the deep part of the ocean, but I could
Don't
imagine.
go.
I can imagine the exact same fear coming from me, because you're perfectly fine with what you can see. You're perfectly fine with water, waves, look at the dolphin, But what's underneath the dolphin? What's in the dark? What's in the deep, dark blackness of the trench?
Shane's
I
fears.
assume the dolphin's genitals are underneath the dolphin.
Well, that's how
They're
you.
gentles.
They're gentles. They're gentle giants.
Yeah, I'm sure their gentles are. Oh, my mom's a nut.
I hope everyone hasn't been scared of this podcast. So I hope you enjoyed listening to every bit of it on Spotify, iTunes, Good Pods, CastBox, blah, blah, blah. Give us 5 stars, please. Tell us why we're amazing. Tell us why we suck, but give us the 5 stars. And then go buy something with our logo on it on one of the websites I have underneath the episode.
And if you'd like to discuss, what your favorite scary moments are in movies, or something that's actually scary that we haven't mentioned that's another form of media, enlighten me. Go ahead and message us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter by getting on @NerdGrapevine. And then you can donate a little bit to the cause, get a shiny holographic sticker, and unlock future content that we still have not released. And you could do so by getting on Patreon, looking up Nerd Grapevine, and donating a little bit of money to us. Whatever you do, though, don't just sit around and talk about what it looks like to have your skin on your neck filleted open and look like a gaping wound that's now going to be the point in your body that's going to talk, because you'd be talking about the Clive Barker series, but you'd also probably cause the person you're speaking about that to have a little bit of...
The scariest thing that I've done this week is I spent all 8 of my pocket dollars.
No.
What are you going to eat with now?
Well, I ran out and I grabbed the $5 out of my glove box. I got my glove box dollars.
Okay.
They're
Thank
my emergency
goodness.
backup pocket dollars, but
Thank goodness.
there's 3 less. You can also find us on Discord. There's a link in the description. Tell us what terrifies you, and we won't scare you with it. We won't sneak up in your house and paint up like the ocean or anything and wait for you to come home and jump out at you. Talk to us, send us memes. We have a fun time. Tell us your secrets. Not gross ones.
No, I want those too.
If
I want all of them.
if you send us the gross ones, do it as a private message, because I just feel like that's how it should be.
It'll cause Discord if they do.
It'll definitely cause Discord if you don't. We're on there live, uncut, uncensored, and irrevocably circumcised.
And we're also on YouTube. Check us out there as well. And I guess it's time to go.
Bye.
Is it time to go?
Bye.
Tiny.
Huh?
When life gives you grapes.
Fillet them, skin them, grill them, consume them with your butt.
Oh, you did an M. Night Shyamalan
What a twist! What a twist!